WABC New York and 107.1 WLIR Hampton Bays.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
Good morning. It is Liz Radabali here on the 5 o'clock news hour for Noam Laden this Friday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Before we get into the top stories of the day, your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Today, it's going to be mostly sunny, high of 33. Tonight, mostly clear with a low of 25. Tomorrow, rain and snow, high of 35. And looking through the weekend, Sunday, rain continues, high of 48. Monday, partly sunny, high of 31. If you're heading out the door right now over in Paterson, New Jersey, 29 and partly cloudy. Oyster Bay, Long Island, 30 and clear. And up in Mount Vernon, it's 30 and clear. And over here in Midtown, 31 and clear outside our studios.
The top 5 at 5.
Your top 5 stories today. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is not ruling out firing City Mayor Eric Adams. ICE is back at Rikers Island following a meeting between Mayor Eric Adams and border czar Tom Homan. RFK Jr. has been confirmed as the Health and Human Services Secretary in the effort to make America healthy again. Vice President J.D. Vance says that America will deploy troops to Ukraine if Russia does not agree to peace. TikTok is back up in American app stores following a temporary ban. First up, the DOJ moving to drop a 5-count indictment against Mayor Eric Adams. It was the first time in the Big Apple's history that a sitting mayor was indicted on criminal charges. Those charges including receiving campaign contributions from foreign nationals, wire fraud, soliciting campaign contributions from foreign nationals, and soliciting and accepting a bribe. He was accused of being tied up in a straw donor scheme and doing favors for other foreign governments. Hochul, the only official in the state who has the power to get rid of Adams from his position, revealed on MSNBC that she's speaking with officials about the mayor's future. The governor told host Rachel Maddow that she read a letter by now former acting Manhattan U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon, claiming Adams' legal team offered a quid pro quo in hopes of seeing his federal charges get dismissed. She said that she needs time to process. However, Hochul's number 2 Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado is urging Adams to resign. On social media, he said, New York City deserves a mayor accountable to the people, not beholden to the president. A spokesperson for City Hall dismissed the comments from the executives in Albany, saying that Adams is not going anywhere. This all comes after the resignation of Attorney Danielle Sassoon. In her resignation letter, according to the New York Post, she said that attorneys for Adams urged a quid pro quo deal at a meeting with the Trump Justice Department. Adams' defense lawyer Alex Spiro called Sassoon's quid pro quo accusation a total lie. Following a meeting with border czar Tom Homan, City Mayor Eric Adams says the two have a clear understanding of how they can work together. Adams says Homan assured him that ICE agents wouldn't just go into sensitive locations whenever they wanted to.
He's very clear that in order to go into those entities, you need a judicial warrant. And he has not articulated to me he wants to go into our schools. There's no desire to round up our children.
Adams says it was clear Homan had a lot of concerns and anxieties about what was happening in the city.
And we were able to sit down and give clarity on what is under my authority and what is under the authority of the city council and other laws that I'm playing within. And we walked out with a clear understanding of how we could work together.
Adams said yesterday he will use his executive powers to allow federal immigration authorities back into the city's sprawling Rikers Island jail complex. That marks a substantial shift in the city's sanctuary city policies, preventing it from enforcing immigration law. And Adams says Homan's top priority is going after violent criminals.
My message to him and what I got from him, Eric, there are dangerous people on our streets in this country in general, but specifically here in New York City. We want to work with you to get them off your streets.
Meeting coming just days after the Department of Justice ordered the federal corruption case against Adams to be dropped. There have been concerns among many in the city that Adams is under President Donald Trump's control and that he could make changes to the city's sanctuary laws. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now the new head of the Department of Health and Human Services. Kennedy was interviewed yesterday on Fox News.
What we're going to do is give people good science. We don't have good safety studies on almost any of the vaccines.
Kennedy says he'll implement a Make America Healthy Again plan, which he said aims to refocus U.S. health priorities away from infectious diseases. RFK says the U.S. spends heavy money on health care despite a sick population.
We spend 2 to 3 times what other countries pay for health care, and we have the worst health outcomes. We literally have the sickest population in the world.
Democrats also considering the past comments Kennedy has made against vaccines during his confirmation. However, that did not stop it. He was sworn into the office from the Oval as President Donald Trump watched on yesterday. Vice President J.D. Vance is warning that the United States could send troops to Ukraine and hit Russia with further sanctions if Vladimir Putin does not negotiate a peace deal in good faith. And Apple and Google have put the popular social media app TikTok back in their mobile app stores. It ends a months-long standoff between the platforms and the video app after a law went into effect back in January banning the app. It also gives users the ability to update the software and provide security fixes. The app left the digital library after a law passed by Congress went into effect January 19th, banning TikTok due to concerns over national security. The app is owned by a Beijing-based company called ByteDance. The company's got a letter from Attorney General Pam Bondi letting them know that the Trump admin will not prosecute them for supporting TikTok. The green light from the Justice Department allowed the companies to put the app back up. However, legal experts say that Apple and Google could potentially still face consequences for violating federal law. Moving into some national news, President Donald Trump finished a meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House. He lauded the relation between the two countries in a press conference shortly after.
The U.S.-India Compact for the 21st century is a historic initiative that will deepen every aspect of our partnership and our friendship.
Trump said the U.S. will soon begin selling military equipment to India.
Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters.
He also took shots at the previous administration, saying Biden did not take care of the long-running disparities in the trading relationships between the two countries, which Trump says is now the best it's ever been. The prime minister's visit follows a controversial U.S. deportation flight earlier this month that saw over 100 Indian migrants return to their home country. President Trump is defending his tariffs after unveiling a new round from the Oval Office.
I think it's going to make the United States stronger, and in many ways it could make other countries stronger too. You know, other countries want to have a strong United States. They want to have a strong America. And I think it's going to make us very, very strong, much stronger. And we have a lot of work we're doing on the military. Our military already, I've authorized some contracts to be built that are very substantial. We're building the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest military equipment in the world. We're building it.
The new tariffs come a day after data showed inflation went up more than expected last month. According to Wednesday's Consumer Price Index report, the year-over-year inflation rate ticked up to 3% in January.
Oh, I think what's going to go up is jobs are going to go up, and prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. And I think the farmers are going to be helped by this very much.
Trump added that value-added tax systems used by other countries will be considered tariffs. Over 24 people are injured after a car drove into a crowd at a trade union demonstration in Munich in what some officials are calling a suspected attack and not an accident. NBC's Molly Hunter has the latest.
Police say they have, quote, secured the driver on the scene, a 24-year-old Afghan man who was known to police in relation to drug and theft incidents.
This all comes as world leaders are in town, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as part of a security conference. President Donald Trump is claiming Russia invaded Ukraine because of comments by then-President Biden made about Ukraine possibly joining NATO. Brian Shook reports.
Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office Thursday, Trump said the war started because Biden went out and said they could join NATO, and he shouldn't have said that.
As soon as he said that, I said, you know what? You're going to have a war now, and I was right about that.
Biden said in 2021, before the war began, that joining NATO was in Ukraine's hands. In 2023, after Russia invaded Ukraine, Biden said Ukraine was not ready to join NATO and that certain conditions had to be met first. I'm Brian Shook.
The ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas appears to be back on course. Details from Giles Gibson.
Mediators from Egypt and Qatar have been holding urgent talks to try to keep the ceasefire alive, and now it appears a breakthrough is imminent. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reports that Hamas has agreed to release 3 hostages in exchange for Israel increasing the amount of humanitarian aid.
Earlier this week, Hamas threatened to delay the scheduled release of 3 more hostages on Saturday.
While the two sides have previously accused each other of violating the terms of the ceasefire since it came into effect in mid-January, this is the closest it's come to actually collapsing.
In response, Israel's prime minister said he would order military operations to resume in Gaza. President Donald Trump has said, quote, all hell will break loose if Hamas doesn't release the remaining Israeli hostages this weekend. There are bipartisan talks about the purchase of Greenland. Senator Ted Cruz says this is not as far-fetched as some make it out to be.
Much of the history of our nation was formed by acquiring territory. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson negotiated the Louisiana Purchase.
The Texas Republican heads the Commerce Committee, which held hearings this week about the strategic importance of Greenland. Senator Ted Cruz says we've bought land before, including from the country of Denmark, which currently owns Greenland.
The United States purchased the Virgin Islands from the Danish Crown in 1917.
And he talked more about that deal.
To protect the newly opened Panama Canal and safe-time maritime routes from Germany at war with Western powers.
In the argument of purchasing Greenland, he pointed to trade routes and a growing influence of China and Russia in the Arctic region. There were some fireworks at a Capitol Hill hearing over Elon Musk's new Department of Government Efficiency. Republicans defended the moves to eliminate overspending, which they say has been growing for years.
D.C. politicians and too many obstinate bureaucrats have coordinated to create what is essentially the largest money laundering scheme in history.
That's Texas Congressman Michael Cloud. He says for too long, politicians have been allowed to funnel big bucks to pet projects.
We have a president bringing the leadership needed and a focused effort to this waste, fraud, and abuse.
Democrats, though, blasted a lack of transparency from the Trump administration. Cost-cutting, they say, needs to come from Congress and not from Musk, who they feel could potentially benefit from recent moves. Recent inquiries into potential conflicts of interest include the Department of Defense and the contracts with SpaceX owned by Elon Musk. 77 WABC News Time, 5:15. Time to head over to the sports desk with Justin Ellick. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, always. Thank you very much. We will begin with some early offseason news for both local NFL camps. It has now been made official. The Aaron Rodgers era with the New York Jets is over. Nearly 2 years after welcoming him with a large-scale news conference, the Jets said goodbye to Rodgers yesterday with a news release that included statements of gratitude from team officials. The Jets didn't give a reason for the decision, saying only they met last week with Rodgers and, quote, shared that our intention was to move in a different direction at quarterback. Coach Aaron Glenn and General Manager Darren Moogie said in a joint statement there was no statement from Rodgers in the news release. The 41-year-old flew from California to New Jersey last week for a face-to-face meeting with Glenn and Moogie, both of whom were introduced at a January 27th news conference. Glenn was non-committal on Rodgers' status in the news conference, reinforcing the belief that the new regime was going to part with the quarterback, who has 1 year left on his contract. We will keep a close eye on the whereabouts of Aaron Rodgers, whether he chooses to retire or go elsewhere. Regarding the New York Football Giants, the franchise is putting a limited stake in the team on the market, they said last night, with the process likely to set a record for an NFL franchise evaluation. The Giants are looking into the possibility of selling up to 10% of the team. The Mara and Tisch families currently own 50% of the Giants. John Mara and Steve Tisch have been in control of the organization on behalf of their families since the deaths of their fathers in 2005. Though the reason for exploring a limited partner is not known, the timing comes after the NFL approved a policy in August that allows private equity firms to buy up to 10% of the team, or of teams, I should say. Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, played around with this new, this new edict in the NFL earlier this season, sold 8% of the Eagles, who obviously are at the top of the NFL mountain. Maybe the Giants are trying to follow that blueprint. Checking in on ice hockey in the NHL, where the United States whooped up on Team Finland in last night's opener for both squads in the NHL's Four Nations Face-Off tournament. The final score 6-1 from Montreal. The Kachucks, Matthew and Brady, netted a pair each. Matt Boldy and Jake Gunsel also scored, securing an easy 3 points for Team USA that catapults them to the top of the tournament's leaderboard after round one. Team Canada sits in second with 2 points, Sweden thereafter with 1, and Finland sitting in last with 0. All four teams will play next tomorrow, with Finland meeting Sweden at 1 p.m. and USA facing off with Canada. That's at 8 p.m. And to the NBA, as we head into the All-Star break across the league, festivities will take place this weekend in San Francisco, culminating with a semifinal and championship game round between Team Kenny, Team Chuck, Team Shaq, and Team Candace. That is must-watch TV, Liz. My God. In which the first team in each game to 40 points wins. That is your sports, and I'm Justin Ellett on 77 WABC.
In some local news, officials across New York State busy dealing with immigration-related issues. That comes after the Department of Justice sues New York State Governor Kathy Hochul and State Attorney General Letitia James for allegedly failing to enforce the nation's immigration laws and putting migrants ahead of its own citizens.
They were. I'm an American and I'm homeless. That's not fair.
Probably, yeah, but I don't know.
There's probably things that could have been going towards Americans more than migrants. I felt like it's possibly all a part of an objective. That agenda didn't work out, so.
Hochul says the lawsuit is smoke and mirrors, calling it worthless and publicity-driven with the expectation that it will be a failure. Meantime, City Mayor Eric Adams talked immigration with President Trump's border czar Tom Homan after the DOJ dropped the corruption charges against him.
Yes, he should meet with him, whether he was still under indictment or not. That business was going to take place regardless of what. You're the mayor of the city of New York. You have to speak to these people.
Following that meeting with border czar Tom Homan, City Mayor Eric Adams says the two have a clear understanding of how they can work together. Adams says Homan assured him that ICE agents won't just go into any sensitive locations whenever they want to.
He's very clear that in order to go into those entities, you need a judicial warrant. And he has not articulated to me he wants to go into our schools. There's no desire to round up our children.
Adams reiterating that the top priority is violent criminals.
My message to him and what I got from him, Eric, there are dangerous people on our streets in this country in general, but specifically here in New York City. We want to work with you to get them off your streets.
The top federal prosecutor in Mayor Eric Adams' corruption case is resigning rather than following the Department of Justice's orders to drop those charges against him. Danielle Sassoon fired off a brief letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi saying she's resigned effective immediately. Multiple sources say she did not mention the Adams case. Sassoon's departure comes days after the DOJ directed New York prosecutors to drop the case against Adams, who's accused of accepting illegal campaign contributions and bribes from people trying to buy his influence, including officials from Turkey. Adams has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. And his federal corruption case is dismissed, but Adams looking ahead, talking about re-election. Lisa Ritchie reports.
An exclusive interview with Mayor Eric Adams was held on Katz and Cosby on Thursday. Rita Cosby asked the mayor if he thinks he'll win re-election.
Yes, because I'm going to speak to New Yorkers. I'm going to speak directly to New Yorkers that when you run for office, you're not running against candidates, you're running against yourself. If you do your job, many people are going to run and say what they will do. I'm able to run and say what I have done.
Adams says he did nothing wrong and focused on running the city through his entire federal prosecution. I'm Lisa Ritchie for 77 WABC News.
A Queens EMT has been arrested and charged in connection with a 2021 fatal gunpoint robbery in Astoria. Queens District Attorney Melinda Katz announced those charges yesterday. Jordan Hanna, 26 years old, was indicted on 22 counts, including murder and robbery, for allegedly shooting 22-year-old Kyle Griffin during that armed robbery on 30th Avenue back in April of 2021. An accomplice described by prosecutors as unapprehended remains at large. The defendant, now an FDNY EMT, thought he got away with murder after allegedly shooting and killing a young man he tried to rob 4 years ago. That's from Katz in a statement. This seemingly targeted robbery will not go unanswered because my office never gives up on our victims. We will seek justice for Kyle Griffin and his loved ones. Hannah's attorney, Kenneth Jamal Montgomery, did not comment. The fatal shooting occurred months before Hannah joined the FDNY as an EMT in January of 2022. Prosecutors say that Griffin had just left a lounge and was sitting in the driver's seat of his white Range Rover when a Jeep Grand Cherokee pulled up and blocked his door. Hannah and his accomplice allegedly got into Griffin's vehicle from the back seat, pointed their guns at him, and demanded, "Give us everything you have." Griffin was shot twice in the torso as he tried to drive away. He was pronounced dead at Mount Sinai Hospital. No arrests were made at the time. Investigators later recovered shell casings from the scene, along with 2 loaded pistols, a black .380 caliber Smith & Wesson, and a black 9mm Glock found several blocks away. Hannah pleaded not guilty and was remanded without bail. He was due back in court on April 30th. The National Park Service has removed references of transgender people from its website about an iconic gay rights landmark in Manhattan. Even T in the LGBTQ+ was removed from the Park Service's website for the Stonewall National Monument in Greenwich Village. It's not clear if the references at the monument itself have been changed. The monument commemorates the Stonewall Inn, a bar which became ground zero for the gay rights movement after residents fought back against police raids. City Councilman Eric Botcher, whose district includes the monument, says the Trump administration is trying to erase the existence of transgender people, adding the rebellion at Stonewall would not have happened without trans people. The MTA is testing a new strategy for curbing subway fare evasion. It's a turnstile tweak involving a crescent-shaped 4-inch high metal shield. It debuted at the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall Chambers Street subway station in Lower Manhattan this week. The MTA hopes it will discourage those would-be fare beaters from jumping over the turnstiles. With Manhattan congestion pricing in effect, there is a new scam to worry about. James Flippin explains.
As if the $9 on average toll wasn't enough of a headache, authorities are alerting drivers about a new Easy Pass scam that's emerged since the MTA's tolling program went into effect in early January. Scammers have been sending people official-looking text messages claiming they have unpaid toll invoices and that they need to pay up or face excessive late fees. The messages have links attached so as to pay electronically, but you're urged not to click those links. EasyPass says it doesn't send out payment requests that way. James Flippin for 77 WABC News.
A Texas judge yesterday imposed fines and orders on a doctor in New York's Hudson Valley in a case widely seen as a test of state telemedicine and abortion laws. The ruling came from a judge in Collin County, Texas, against Dr. Margaret Daly Carpenter of New Paltz, New York. The judge, citing Texas's abortion laws, barred Carpenter from prescribing abortion drugs to Texas residents and fined her $113,000. New York has a shield law that bars doctors from cooperating with out-of-state legal actions. Louisiana's governor said he signed a warrant to extradite Carpenter there for trial and in another case. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, citing the shield law, said she would not sign it. The Texas case is expected to make its way to the Supreme Court. 77 WABC News time is 5:29. The National Grid workers' strike is looming out on Long Island. Negotiations continued into the early morning as the utility provider and the IBEW Local 1049 union were unable to come to terms on a new contract. The strike deadline that was midnight last night extended earlier this morning. The workers, who are responsible for natural gas services and power plant operations across the island, are lobbying for better wages, health care, and better retirement benefits. Former Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano's convictions for federal bribery and conspiracy to commit federal bribery are being reversed. A federal appeals court reversed those convictions yesterday. Mangano was convicted in 2019 for taking bribes to secure millions of dollars in loans for an Oyster Bay restaurant owner. The remainder of the charges were upheld, and he continues to serve his 12-year sentence in federal prison.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
It is Liz Radabali, your Valentine, here on the 5 o'clock news hour, filling in for Noam Laden this lovely February 14th. Good morning. And before we dive back into the headlines, your forecast from the 77 WABC weather desk. Today it's going to be mostly sunny, high of 33. Tonight and overnight going to be mostly clear with a low of 25. And tomorrow rain rolls in, possible snow showers, high of 35. And Sunday rain continues, high of 48, but the sun does come out at the start of the new week. Monday, partly sunny, high of 31. If you're heading out the door right now over in Paterson, New Jersey, 30 and cloudy. Oyster Bay out on Long Island, 31 and clear. Mount Vernon, 32 and clear. And right now, 31 and partly cloudy outside our Midtown studios. Turning into some national news, President Donald Trump says he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin is committed to lasting peace with Ukraine.
I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President Putin, when I spoke to him yesterday, I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace.
Do you trust President Putin?
I believe that, I believe that he would like to see something happen. I trust him on this subject. I think he'd like to see something happen. I think it could have happened a long time ago. I think Biden, number one, it shouldn't have started, but it did.
Trump also mentioned bringing Russia back into the G7 summit.
I'd love to have him back. I think it was a mistake to throw him out. Look, it's not a question of liking Russia or not liking Russia. It was the G8. And, I said, what are you doing? You guys, all you talk about is Russia, and they should be sitting at the table. I think Putin would love to be back. Obama and a couple of other people made a mistake, and they got Russia out. It's very possible that if that was the G8, you wouldn't have had the problem with Ukraine. And if I was president, you definitely wouldn't have had the problem with Ukraine. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. But you ask a very good question, the G8. It used to be the G8, and then these people threw them out. And I was arguing with Trudeau and with numerous of the people. Actually, Prime Minister Abe, a great man from Japan, agreed with me 100%, and some of the others did too. But I got there, it was the G7, as you know. They had already been terminated. I think it would have been very helpful, and it still would be helpful to have Russia be a part of that mix. And I think if they were, I don't think you would have had the problem that you have right now.
He responded to questions over how he would have approached the conflict differently that got Russia kicked out of the alliance in the first place.
Russia is part of the G20. They kicked them out, of course, because they illegally annexed Crimea. I mean, how would you have responded if Russia invaded or took over?
They took Crimea during Obama. 2014. They took. Well, now they're looking to take the whole thing. Then they took a big chunk of land and people, as you know, during Bush. And now they're trying to take the whole thing during Biden. You know, the only one that didn't give them anything is Trump. They never took anything with Trump. Nothing, not 2 inches of property of land.
Trump claiming that Russia invaded Ukraine because of comments by then-President Biden about Ukraine possibly joining NATO. Speaking to reporters at the Oval Office yesterday, Trump said the war started because Biden went out and said they could join NATO, and he shouldn't have done that. Trump added that as soon as Biden said that, he knew that there was going to be a war. 14 states are suing Elon Musk and President Donald Trump. Tammy Trujillo has the details.
The lawsuit filed by Democratic attorneys general argues DOGE and the authority the tech billionaire has been granted are unconstitutional. The states are challenging what they call the unlawful delegation of executive power given to Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency. Arizona, Michigan, and Rhode Island are among the states who have joined the suit. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays says America's founders would be outraged that the people of this country are now subject to the whims of a single unelected billionaire. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
In some more local news, Governor Kathy Hochul sat down with MSNBC host Rachel Maddow, where she spoke candidly about the latest happenings in the Mayor Eric Adams case. Maddow asked Hochul if she was reconsidering removing Adams from his position as mayor.
Let me tell you from a couple of angles here. One is that this is unbelievably unprecedented for the Department of Justice in Washington to interfere in this way. My husband was a 30-year federal prosecutor. Barack Obama made him his United States attorney. You look at what happened here. This is not supposed to happen in our system of justice. The Bondi administration in that Department of Justice is already showing they're corrupt. Now, set that aside. I did see the letter that was issued by the acting United States attorney. The allegations are extremely concerning and serious.
Yes.
But I cannot, as the governor of this state, have a knee-jerk, politically motivated reaction like a lot of other people are saying right now. I have to do it smart, what's right, and I'm consulting with other leaders in government at this time.
That letter that she's referring to was from then acting Manhattan attorney Danielle Sassoon, who fired off a brief letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi that she's resigned effective immediately. Apparently, in that letter, she mentioned that there was a quid pro quo deal with the Adams lawyers and the Trump Justice Department. A new strain of Mpox has been confirmed in New York for the first time. The New York State Department of Health issued a health advisory this past week saying a new strain of the viral disease has been confirmed in a person with symptoms who had recently traveled to Africa. The department says the risk to the public is currently low as there are no other known cases at this time. Mpox is rarely fatal but can be dangerous to people with weak immune systems. The new strain is reportedly more infectious. Individuals infected with Mpox are urged to stay isolated until their symptoms are resolved. Mayor Eric Adams' administration is highlighting record high numbers of affordable units created in New York City. The mayor says more than 14,600 households moved out of shelter using rental subsidies, a 24% increase from the previous year and a record high.
Our goal is to make New York City the best place on the globe to raise a family. That means we need more affordable housing across our entire city.
The administration has had back-to-back years of most units produced for formerly homeless, most supportive units produced, and most senior units also created as well. Deputy Mayor Meera Joshi says the administration is trying to tackle the housing shortage.
And over the last year, we've built a very big toolbox and wasted no time to use everything in our power to push housing production.
Adams' latest proposal would actually add 100,000 homes in Manhattan over the next decade to help address that severe housing shortage. The NYPD says Christian Millett, who's charged with murder, is giving gruesome details about the death of a Manhattan man whose torso was found floating in a suitcase. Police say 23-year-old, who they arrested on Wednesday night, is admitting to killing his 65-year-old roommate by stomping on his head and stabbing him a dozen times with an ice pick.
Was always yelling, hitting, pushing. Edwin was always coming down, trying to escape the situation.
A neighbor at the Baruch houses in Lower Manhattan, where Millett lived with a retired postal worker, says their relationship was pretty volatile. Police say the motive was an ongoing dispute over food. Millett is also accused of dismembering his victim before dumping his body in a suitcase in the East River. Happy and Patty are a pair of elephants who have made headlines as many animal lovers sound the alarm on the living conditions of the animals living at the Bronx Zoo. The New York City Bar is requesting the Wildlife Conservation Society, which operates that zoo, either move them to a new sanctuary or face consequences. They want the elephants to be moved out of possession of the Bronx Zoo, and they say this can be done the easy way, voluntarily, or the hard way, through the strong arm of city government agencies. This all follows a list ranking the worst zoos for elephants across the country. The Bronx Zoo came in second. The elephant enclosures at the zoo are more than 1,000 times smaller than the natural range of the animal. The president of the NYC Bar Lawyers says if the zoo does not cooperate with the request to relinquish those elephants, they will intervene. And they say that city agencies and city council could flex some of their authority. They've made the argument that the city has every right to intervene since it is a city-owned public park funded by taxpayers. In a statement, the Conservation Society says the animals are well cared for by a team of professionals and their enclosures are up to code. A viral video turning into a sign of life for a woman who was reported missing last summer. It happened on Wednesday morning around 11:30 a.m. on a southbound W train. MTA operators stopped the train at 34th Street, where a 25-year-old woman gave birth to the youngest rider on the W train.
We have a medical situation. This train is being held at the station. We're waiting for EMT.
And when the story went viral on TikTok, the woman was recognized and identified as someone who was reported missing in August of 2024. She was last seen in Florida by her ex-boyfriend. Her family told the police she may need some mental health assistance as she was diagnosed with schizophrenia shortly before her disappearance. After the woman gave birth, she and the baby were taken to Bellevue Hospital. City Transit President Demetrius Critchlow says the two were doing just fine. And a man is under arrest on charges he posed as an immigration officer before trying to rape a woman in Brooklyn. Leon Howell was arrested yesterday, charged with rape, robbery, and other accounts. Authorities say 51-year-old Hispanic victim was in Brooklyn Heights when she was approached by Howell, who's claiming to be an ICE agent, and accosted her to a nearby stairwell. Police say he punched her, tried to rape her before running off with her cell phone and purse. The victim suffered several injuries but is expected to be okay. 77 WABC News Time, 5:45. Time to head over to the sports desk with Justin Alec. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Liz. Thank you very much. We will begin with early offseason news for both local NFL camps. It has now been made official The Aaron Rodgers era with the New York Jets is over. Nearly 2 years after welcoming him with a large-scale news conference, the Jets said goodbye to Rodgers yesterday with a news release that included statements of gratitude from team officials. The Jets didn't give a reason for the decision, saying only they met last week with Rodgers and, quote, shared that our intention was to move in a different direction at quarterback. Coach Aaron Glenn and General Manager Darren Moogie said in a joint statement. There was no statement from Rodgers in that news release. The 41-year-old flew from California to New Jersey last week for a face-to-face meeting with Glenn and Moogie, both of whom were introduced at a January 27th news conference. Glenn was non-committal on Rodgers' status in the news conference, reinforcing the belief that the new regime was going to part with the quarterback, who has 1 year left on his contract. We'll keep a close eye on Rodgers and his whereabouts. Regarding the New York Football Giants, the franchise is putting a limited stake in the team on the market. They said last night, with the process likely to set a record for an NFL franchise valuation. The Giants are looking into the possibility of selling up to 10% of the team. The Mara and Tisch families currently own 50% of the Giants. John Mara and Steve Tisch have been in control of the organization on behalf of their families since the deaths of their fathers in 2005. So the reason for exploring a limited partner is not known. The timing comes after the NFL approved a policy in August that allows private equity firms to buy up to 10% of teams. We have seen a few teams around the league have some success using this strategy, most notably the Philadelphia Eagles, your Super Bowl champions. Jeffrey Lurie sold about $8 billion worth of the Eagles earlier this season. Checking in on ice hockey in the NHL, the United States whooped up on Team Finland in last night's opener for both squads in the NHL's Four Nations face-off tournament. The final score 6-1 from Montreal. The Tkachuk brothers, Matthew and Brady, nutted a pair each. Matt Boldy and Jake Gunsel also scored, securing an easy 3 points for Team USA. That catapults them to the top of the tournament's leaderboard after round one. Team Canada sits in second with 2 points. Sweden thereafter with one. Finland sitting in last place with zilch. All four teams will play next tomorrow. Finland meeting Sweden at 1, and the USA facing off with Canada primetime at 8 p.m. And to the NBA, as we head into the All-Star break across the league, festivities will take place this weekend in San Francisco, culminating with a semifinal and championship game round between Team Kenny, Team Chuck, Team Shaq, and Team Candace, in which the first team to 40 points wins each game. I will not be watching that. That is your Sports Liz, and I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
77 WABC News Time, 5:49. Today is Valentine's Day, a day celebrating love, but for those still a bit upset over some love that was lost, there are some creative offers for you to celebrate the day. First up, you can name a cockroach after someone at the Bronx Zoo. This is a standing tradition. While some places have offers to feed bugs and rats named after an ex, those are those celebrations you could take part in if you're alone today. The Bronx Zoo is a bit more sentimental than malicious. The Madagascar hissing roaches come with a certificate. You can also upgrade the gift with a beanie, fanny pack, a roach plushie. There's also some experiences you could take part in: a Valentine's virtual encounter with a hissing roach and another surprise animal guest. After hours, the zoo offers a Valentine date night. Tickets are good for 2 people. You get to sample sustainably grown chocolate and learn about the bugs that help cocoa farmers in South America. And finally, if that virtual roach encounter was not enough, you can book an in-person encounter. All that information can be found at bronxzoo.com/roach. Once again, today, Valentine's Day, a recent study finds a city in New York, upstate, is the best in the country for dating. Consumer Affairs analyzed the 150 most populous cities in the U.S. for a ratio of single residence, cost of living, quality of life, and dating interests. It found Rochester the best for dating. It says Rochester has 682 single residents for every 1,000 people. Pretty good numbers there, and a median rent of $857 for a one-bedroom apartment. In addition, 90% of the population lives within a 10-minute walk of a green space. Providence, Rhode Island, Newark, New Jersey, Madison, Wisconsin, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania all round out the top 5. Meanwhile, Brownsville, Texas was rated the worst for dating. You may have to pay more for chocolate this Valentine's Day because of a global cocoa shortage. The cost of chocolate is up a reported 20% this year because of a record high prices. Cocoa is a key ingredient in chocolate and is harvested mostly in West Africa, where cocoa crops have been hit hard recently by climate change and disease, causing prices to go up. Chocolate makers are in turn passing the buck to consumers in those price hikes. And speaking of those consumers, what are they expected to spend? They're expected to shell out a record $27.5 billion with a B this Valentine's Day. That would beat out the 27.4 record set in 2020, according to a survey from the National Retail Federation and Proper Insights and Analytics. This top places people will spend money online are followed by department stores and florists. The most credible version of the history of Valentine's Day can be traced back to 3rd century Rome and the reign of Emperor Claudius II. Mark Mayfield explains.
The emperor thrived on war, but his people eventually grew weary and refused to fight. Married men in particular did their best to stay out of the army. When the emperor decreed that there would be no more marriages, a young Roman Catholic priest named Valentine started performing secret marriages. Claudius called Valentine's marriages acts of treason and had the priest put to death. Since then, Saint Valentine has been recognized as a martyr who sacrificed himself in the name of true love. I'm Mark Mayfield.
In some entertainment news,
Hey, I miss you. I'm talking to you, baby. I miss you.
Well, not so quiet after the Super Bowl. Now Drake's new album with Party Next Door is here. Released just in time for Valentine's Day, the 21-track project is titled Some Sexy Songs for You. The two have collaborated several times over the years, but this marks their first full project together. Teasing the album during a recent show, Drake promised listeners what he called some turn-up songs, as well as some personal feelings.
I'm a legend, I'm irreverent, I be reverent, I be so far, we don't give a fuck.
Kanye West has reportedly split with his wife, Bianca Censori. TMZ reports the couple has contacted divorce lawyers. This comes after a controversial red carpet appearance at the Grammys where Censori revealed a fully transparent dress when she took off her fur jacket. Since the Grammys, West has been pretty busy online, especially on Twitter or X, where he was deplatformed, going on anti-Semitic rants and declaring himself a Nazi. He also sold shirts with anti-Semitic symbols on them as well, a shirt just featuring a swastika. Sabrina Carpenter is joining Chapel Roan in donating money to artists' health coverage. According to public donations records from We Got You, a new fundraising partnership between Roan and the nonprofit group Backline, Carpenter has matched Roan's donation of $25,000 to support accessibility of health care for artists. Her donation also matches that from Charlie XCX and Noah Kahan. This comes after Chapel Roan called on music executives and record labels to provide new artists with livable wages and affordable health care during her acceptance speech at the 2025 Grammy Awards.
Yeah, that's how I get by. Oh, that's how I get by.
Jelly Roll is creating a Losers Run Club. This is part of his long-running health journey. Jelly plans to compete in his second 5K this May in Tampa, Florida. He's inviting fans to train and run alongside him. His meal plan and exercise routine will be posted on a Facebook group and app free of charge. NASA says an asteroid up to 300 feet across could hit Earth within a few years. While the chances are still extremely slim, the probability of impact has gone up since being discovered a few weeks back, now just currently at over 2%. This number has almost doubled from an initial estimate in late January. NASA estimates that the asteroid measures between 130 feet and 300 across. Impact would more than likely only cause local damage, not nearly enough to threaten the planet, thank God. The Minnesota Department of Transportation has announced the winners in this year's Name a Snowplow contest. Among the winners pronounced are Plowabunga. Anthony Sledwords were off to see the blizzard. Each MN-Dot district will have a snowplow that uses one of those winning names. And in some more bit of entertainment news,
All my exes live in Texas.
George Strait and Chris Stapleton are extending their stadium tour due to an overwhelming demand. Music icons will play 5 more shows in 2025. Cities include Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Foxborough, and Englewood. Strait and Stapleton will be joined by special guests Parker McCollum and Little Big Town. Tickets go on sale February 21st. 77 WABC News Time, 5:59, gearing up for the Sid and Friends in the Morning Show. Justin, what's on deck?
Well, thank you, Liz. It is Friday morning. Thank goodness gracious God Almighty. So we are getting ready for the weekend in the right way. Sid and Friends in the Morning. Kicking us off in the way of guests at 6:45. It's going to be our great friend over with Victim Rights New York, Jennifer Harris. And right before Mike Lawler hops on the program this morning at the top of the 7 a.m. hour, the great congressman, of course, K.T. McFarland, the former Deputy National Security Advisor. She'll join us at 7:45, right around there this morning. Jason Whitlock will hop on the program at 8:30. Of course, the host of the great podcast Fearless, and then Alan Dershowitz will join us right around 8:50, 8:45 this morning, and in the 9 a.m. hour, we'll talk to our great buddy, the real estate mogul, Corey Zelnick. It's all coming up on this Friday edition, Sid and Friends in the Morning, coming at you in just a few short moments.
What a way to close out the week. That's the News Hour this morning, Friday, February 14th. I'm Liz Radabali, filling in for Noam Layden. Sid and Friends in the Morning, coming up next right here on 77 WABC.